Hi, I'd like to talk to you a little bit today about the importance of diversity and inclusivity in the workplace. And one of the first things that may come to your mind as we're talking about this is my incredibly white face. You might think to yourself, and I wouldn't blame you, what does this guy know about diversity? Why is this the person that should be talking to us about diversity? And I would understand your assumptions, but I do want to talk to you a little bit about my history to help you understand my perspective on diversity. I think that'll make this conversation go a little bit smoother. You see, I grew up in a very poor rural area of Appalachia. My family was even poorer than the area that we grew up in. Because of this, my younger life was marked largely by financial crisis after financial crisis, simply trying to keep food on the table, trying to keep a roof over our heads, basically just struggling to stay alive. And because of this, I think partly because of this, I grew up with major depression and generalized anxiety disorder. Now, these are things I've been diagnosed with, and I'm seeking therapy. I'm seeking treatment for them, both in the forms of therapy and medication. These interventions have severely benefited me by allowing me to deal with the challenges that come from suffering from mental illness. But anyone who suffers from mental illness can tell you that the challenges themselves can be immense. Emotions can overwhelm you so easily, and some of the things that are so easy for some people become so challenging. Even just the basic day-to-day living, doing the basic chores that you need to do to stay alive can be so taxing and draining and leaving you feel terrible. Now, I'm not saying this to make you feel sorry for me. On the contrary, I'm very happy with my life. I'm happy with how I'm facing my challenges, and I'm happy with the progress I've made. But I do want you to understand that I know what it's like to be on the outside looking in. I know what it's like for nobody to care, to feel like you're unimportant and that nobody's going to help you. That is exactly how a lot of people in our workforce feel every day. Excluded, not wanted. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about diversity in the workplace, and I want to present three arguments to you for why diversity matters. First, we're going to approach this from a practical case. Diversity matters because it's everywhere. It's only getting bigger, and we can't simply ignore it and hope it goes away. Second, the ethical case. This stuff matters because it directly impacts people's lives, has direct effects on outcomes in their lives, such as job satisfaction, overall life satisfaction, physical and mental health, so on and so forth. And finally, I want to say, let's say you don't care about any of that. Let's say you don't care about properly representing the distribution of population in our society, and you certainly don't care about moral issues. Let's say you only care about the bottom line. From a business perspective, I'm still going to make the argument that diversity is not only something you should care about, it's one of the most important things that you should care about. So first, let's talk about this from the practical case. Diversity is everywhere. We live in you may have heard the term globalization. We live in a globalized society, which means that all of our various countries are interconnected. Stuff that happens in one nation influences stuff in another nation, largely due to massive improvements in communication technology and transport technology. We're no longer bound by issues of time and space. We can communicate at the speed of light, and we can transport incredibly fast across massive distances. Because of this, all of our societies are now interconnected, particularly when it comes to our economies. Stuff that happens in the United States economy influences countries all around the world, and vice versa. So let's take a quick look at just how diverse our society is getting in this globalized world. Here we have a chart of the total distribution of, this is just racial diversity for the record. There are many forms of diversity, mental illness, income, religion, so many different facets we could touch on. But for now, we'll just focus on this. This is just the race and ethnic profile for the United States. As you can see, from 2000 to 2010 to 2019, the bars that represent what we consider to be minority races or ethnic groups have been steadily getting larger. Now, when we look at younger people, we see that those bars are even larger. Approximately 50% of Gen Z now identifies as a racial or ethnic minority group, what we consider in our society to be a racial or ethnic minority group. 50%. Okay, these numbers are only going to continue to steadily progress. In fact, the Pew Research Center suggests that by 2050, we won't have a racial or ethnic majority like we currently consider the white group. This is a projection by the Census Bureau, and as you can see, minorities are represented by the gray bar. The gray bar is consistently increasing across the decades, such that by the time we reach 2050, the gray bar has actually overtaken the smaller bar. And as you can assume, or I mean, we can make the extrapolation from the previous chart that we looked at, that this will happen much sooner for younger generations. In fact, since it's already at 50%, it's already almost happened for Gen Z. Okay, so we can't simply ignore diversity. We can't simply look the other way and hope it's going to go away. It's not going to happen. Next, let's talk about the ethical case for diversity. Why should we care? Haven't we fixed all this stuff? Isn't the diversity issues largely a thing of the past, a thing of civil rights movements and women's suffrage, all that stuff took care of that stuff, right? The fact of the matter is the data does not play that out. It does not show that we have solved the issue. As I mentioned earlier, our current distribution of labor does not accurately reflect our diverse population, either from a racial perspective or a gender perspective or a religious perspective or whatever perspective you want to look at it. Our workforce does not actively reflect our diverse population. The vast majority of our workforce is still white males. And particularly when we look at leadership issues, the higher we go up into, in fact, 78% of people within companies surveyed say that leadership lacks diversity, leadership within their organization. 78% of individuals surveyed. I know, regardless of what you think about surveys, that's a really high percentage. Furthermore, when we look at things like gender, things get really spooky. See, you might think that we've solved the gender gap, but the fact of the matter is we haven't. Women still make less money across the board compared to their male counterparts. The World Economics Forum predicts that it will take us another 99.5 years to fix that particular disparity. And that's just for gender. If gender disparity is that bad, you can only imagine some of the other problems. Okay. So the fact of the matter is, when we don't address diversity in the workplace, people suffer. They suffer from feeling excluded. They suffer from feeling like nobody cares about them, and ultimately they will end up leaving the organization. Diversity inclusions in organizations is one of the leading predictions of retention, your ability to keep your employees. And while I'm talking about this, you'll see now that I'm kind of moving into the business case for diversity, because at this point we're talking about tangible outcomes, talking about keeping your employees. But it's not just about keeping your employees, because research has shown that businesses with strong diversity initiatives are 35% more likely to have annual returns above the median. In other words, they're going to make more money. They're more likely, 35% more likely, which is pretty large, to make more money than other companies who don't have as strong diversity initiatives. Quite simply, diversity matters because people care about it. Individuals seeking employment indicate that diversity initiatives is one of the single most important areas they look for when they're applying for jobs. a lot of the highest quality labor force you will find in minority groups. So over the past couple decades, companies have done what they can to try to broaden their net and cast out to a lot of different employees to really tap into those valuable resources. We might find people from different ethnic groups or different racial groups that have severe talents that we wouldn't discover if we weren't willing to tap into those diverse groups. Furthermore, businesses that don't invest in diversity initiatives are more likely to have less employee satisfaction. They're more likely to have employees quit, like I said, lower retention earlier, and they're more likely to have serious PR problems. Diversity matters in the public eye. It's not just about doing the right thing from a business perspective. It's about making sure that you look like you're doing the right thing on paper. More and more, what people care about is making the effort to make sure to show that diversity matters. It's not just about checking some boxes and making sure that you have a Black employee and you have a lesbian employee and you have someone with a mental illness. No, it's about making sure that no matter who you are or what background you come from, creating a culture within your organization that no matter who you are, everyone feels welcome and included. And that is the current philosophy of thinking on workplace diversity, creating a culture of inclusivity. It's not so much about making sure that our population perfectly reflects the diversity that we have in our workforce, but rather that no matter who you are, you can find a place within this organization. No matter what background you come from, you can find a place within this organization, and we're going to make you feel comfortable. And these things have direct impacts on the health and safety of your employees and the health and safety of your organization. So, in conclusion, diversity matters. It's a lot more complicated than we give it credit for, but it's one of the single most important factors in modern businesses. And if you plan on going into business, it's something you will not be able to get away from. Thank you.